Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Elad Pod. We'll be getting started just in a little bit. We have a wonderful special guest on today, Judy Baker, who is running for state senate right here in Missouri. While you are waiting, please go ahead and share this video so we can have more folks involved in the conversation. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you can actually write in your questions right there. If you're watching on eladgross.live, you'll be able to text a number, and you'll actually get to see it on the screen today while we're talking. That number goes right to this phone. So if you'd prefer to ask your question that way, that's fine too. If you like to stay a little bit private, let me know what you text, because sometimes I just announce your name because I'm really excited about it. But go ahead, share the video right now while you're watching, and we'll be on in just a little bit. See you soon. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Elad Pod. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Today, we have a wonderful special guest, Judy Baker, who is running for State Senate District 19, the Fighting 19th. Very excited to have her. This is one of the hottest Senate district races in the state of Missouri. So we'll be talking to her about what she's doing, what her ideas are for the state, and we'll be answering your questions right here live. If you are watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you're able to comment any of your questions right there live, any other comments that you have. If you're watching on any of those platforms right now, let us know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see where folks are. I know I mentioned this last week, but we even have some viewers overseas right now who are watching this show. And so if you do have any questions as they come up, you might have them already. Go ahead and post those. And as they come up, you're very welcome to do that as well. If you are watching on the website at eladgross.live, there's a phone number right there. And today, you might already notice at the bottom of the screen, it's getting a little bit fancier. While we're talking, you will see that phone number up as well. That number goes right here, so you can go ahead and text your questions. Don't call me. I'm not going to pick up in the middle of the show. Text your questions to me so that I can then share them with Judy, and we'll get those answered too. And if you prefer to send them a little bit more privately than social media, totally understand. That's why I've got that option too. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in Judy right now. Let's make sure that we still have her. Judy, are you there?
I'm still here.
Wonderful. We did it. Now, this is always the most exciting part, when I make sure that the guest is actually there and we can hear them. So thanks for coming. I really appreciate your time. I know that we were talking a little
Great.
before, and you're literally coming right from the campaign trail. So tell us what you were doing earlier today and what you're taking time out right now from what you were doing to come and share your time with us.
Well, I'm more than happy to come be with you. And if I didn't show up, I know that you'd be able to fill the hour. So I'm not worried about you.
Find something, yeah.
Um, I uh, I have my T-shirt on. You can tell.
Hmm.
I've just come right off the trail. We were out doing door to door. Of course, it's no contact door to door. We're
Right.
just doing lit drop and making sure we get to neighborhoods and so on. We were working with Carrie Chesney and Justin Aldred to do that. So we are tripling our efforts. And I tell you, it was great. There were a few people that came out and wanted to talk, and that to me is always a great experience because I love hearing what people are thinking about and what they need from a state senator. And so it kind of slowed me down a little bit, but I got through half my list, and when we're done, I'll go finish the rest of my list.
That's good. Yes, campaign managers everywhere are celebrating that decision. So, no, that's really great. Yeah, I mean, we were doing a lot of the no contact literature dropping kind of stuff, and the best part was when somebody would be outside and you'd say, "Hey, is it okay if I just leave this somewhere for you?" And they'd want to have a conversation. So
They
at least
do.
some
They
of that
want
is
to
still
talk.
happening. Yeah.
I'm really kind of surprised. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, well, look, a lot of folks are very interested. We've got folks who are watching and watch the show quite a bit too. And local politics and local government, as you very well know, is so important and oftentimes much more important than the stuff we see on TV a lot more often because of how much
absolutely,
of an impact it has locally and in our daily
absolutely,
lives. So, could you, I guess,
absolutely.
let's start out. Could you introduce yourself why you're running for office and especially when you talk about a Senate district? Because a lot of folks don't know the numbers so much. Could you tell us what area of the state that is?
You bet. So I am running for state senate 19 against Caleb Rowden, who just won this seat by just 2.5 points 4 years ago in a big wave that he won't have again. So I think we've got a really good opportunity to pick up a state senate seat. Um, it is Boone County and Cooper County, the whole counties, each of them, Boone, all of Boone and all of Cooper. For those of you who may not know what cities sit in there, so Columbia is the big city
Mm-hmm.
in Boone, and then you've got Booneville in the Cooper County. So plus a whole lot of great towns
Yeah.
all over those two counties. So they both of them have rural area as well as the metro areas. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm running, and I've met a whole lot of new people out in Cooper, and it's been really, really fun to be in Cooper County. And the reason I'm running is because I think we need better representation. There's no better reason to do that. We have a democracy that needs to work. And in order for our democracy to work, our representatives need to listen to us and understand the values of the district that they represent. And especially when the people speak by ballot initiative, that representative should listen to what the people say and not try to overturn the will of the people. We have a state senator in this district that has on numerous occasions tried to overturn the will of the people. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
a lot like we are beginning to have to govern by ballot.
Yeah.
The Medicaid expansion is one example of that. Medicaid expansion is one of those things that they've had 7 years and 7 years of opportunity to pass down in Jefferson City. And it always polled well. And particularly in my district, it polled well. And it passed in my district at 63%. And yet our state senator voted against it every time he had a chance. I think we need new representation. So, if you overturn the will of the people, we just might stand up and overturn you.
Right. Right. Yes, and that's happening quite often now here in Missouri.
It is.
And I bet there's something else on the ballot that will be on the ballot in November along with you, and that's a great example of this. That will be Amendment 3, which is an attempt to overturn Clean Missouri, which we just passed here in Missouri for redistricting and a lot of other ethics reforms and everything else. And that's currently in court over what kind of language will be used there. But what are your thoughts about Amendment 3? And I mean, I guess that especially how it connects to Medicaid expansion, this whole kind of line of how the legislature continues to try to overturn things that we pass, but also isn't passing things that we would like it to, which is a reason why we're even proposing in the first place. So have you been talking about Amendment 3 at all? Has it been coming up?
Oh, yeah. Amendment 3 actually passed in Senate District 19, our district, just 2 years ago. It passed with 72% of the vote. And our state senator was one of the spearhead senators that marshaled through the new initiative, or it's not an initiative. It's not a ballot initiative. It's not from the people. It's from the politicians. It is, the legislature trying to overturn the will of the people that actually did a ballot initiative and went to the ballot in 2018, passed it statewide at 63%, and it passed in District 19 at 72%. And our senator worked really hard to overturn it. And it's because they're afraid. It's politics because I'm afraid I might lose some power, or I might lose a district, or we might not, or we might have to do the will of the people when it comes to minimum wage and right to work and, accountability and corruption and pay to play. And, what's being done down in Jeff City right now is really just what people pay for. You've got lobbyists and you've got PACs and you've got huge donors, and they're doing the will of those folks, but they are not doing the will of the people.
Right. Yeah, it's we lost you. Hold up over here for a second. Bringing you back.
I'm still here.
Don't worry. Okay, wait, hold up. We're bringing you back. I got a little technical. Yeah, look at this. This is fun. But see, now you're Judy and I'm not. So wait, that's not working either. Hold up. We'll get you right back in here.
I'm not worried about you.
I'm going to put this guy here. See, this is like the fun stuff on the TV and everything when you try to eliminate, figure it out. And now I'm putting this guy in. We've got a lot of cameras going and everything else there. We're back. Now you're Judy and I'm Elad again. So that's great. So I guess for folks, and I think you might be, if I'm not mistaken, and someone is probably going to correct me as soon as I say this, but I think you're the first candidate for state senate. You're not the first state senator who's been on. We have had a state senator on before, Brian Williams, who we talked a lot about issues around violence and issues around police reform and justice reform, which he's working very passionately on. What is, I guess, for your vision, and this is something we actually have a comment already. I'll bring that in a little bit. But your vision for what a state senator should be doing in Missouri, what that role should be, what the job requires for folks who are a little bit less familiar.
Yeah, so I was a state representative, so I was on the more scrappy side of the Capitol, and the Senate chamber is where there's more negotiation. There's usually more collegiality. I will say that since I've been there, so much of Missouri has become more polarized, unfortunately. So we had, hopefully what I hope to do, and I actually have some friends that I served with as state rep who are in the state Senate still. And I hoped, and they were friends. And, the great thing about a state Senate seat is the ability to have collegiality, to work across the aisle, to be, come to understandings. And then when you don't, and an issue is important enough for your district, you can stand up and you can stay stood up and you can stand up all night if you need to in order to, make sure that the impact of whatever legislation is being considered is understood and heard and by the senators, and then I hope to be able to work across the aisle on solutions that will matter to the state. I hope to, after I've left the state as a state representative, the state house, I had about 13 of my bills pass after I left because they were good ideas. But, I was continually told, we can't pass them for you because you're a Democrat. But once I left, they were able to be adopted by folks and passed. And I was glad about that. I've never been to a bill signing, never been invited, but several of my ideas ended up getting passed. And I'm proud of that. As a senator, I think it'll be a little different. When I come up with an idea, I'm going to be able to work with senators across the aisle and work on what would be a good thing to move along.
Yeah.
So I hope to do that.
Yeah.
I've got several things I want to work on. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are some of those things? So some of the, I guess the issues that you're running on, but also, I mean, with your experience having worked in the legislature and knowing the practicalities of all of that.
Right.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, it is so much more polarized now. It feels. What are your basic running issues, but also issues that you maybe are a little bit under the radar you'd like to work on when you get to the legislature?
Well, I'll get to the ones under the radar in a moment. Some that are on the radar are, we just passed Medicaid expansion, but in many of the conservative states that passed Medicaid expansion, the legislature then went in and manipulated it and gutted it. And,
Right.
So I want to be there as a healthcare expert, both in public health and in, the healthcare delivery system. I want to be able to be there to say, implementing healthcare Medicaid expansion, while tricky, can be done in such a way that we all meet our goals, because there's a lot of opportunity in the Medicaid expansion to do the things with Medicaid that we want to do in order that it is the safety net it needs to be.
Right.
And it is also the insurance gap provider. Right now, we have a lot of people who are working, and if they're working 2 jobs, let's say, which a lot of people are doing, they aren't getting health care because they're part-time in both, right? But they're still working. And they could be working even 40, 60 hours a week, but they still don't get health care. So Medicaid expansion allows for, because what the expansion means is that you've raised the eligibility level so that people can still make money, work, and get this as their safety net insurance. And, and it kind of is it's designed as one of those stair step ups instead of cliff off, so let's say you start making more money than even the expansion, then that makes you eligible for the insurance marketplace, which is stair stepped up and not cliff off. And which means if you start making more money, then you get less subsidy, more money, less subsidy, but it's not no subsidy whatsoever for your insurance. So I'd like to get in there and get my hands dirty on a lot of our social programs that we can redesign to be that stair step up and not cliff off. So that as people would get a dollar raise in a new job or something, they can actually take that job without losing all of their, say, child care or food stamps or whatever.
Right.
We, our social systems are kind of designed in a way that keeps people down. And I want to change that. Economic opportunity is probably my biggest thing. So one of those things that's off the radar that a lot of people don't know about is I've been working to make sure that kids were able to be part of the Most 529 program, which is the college savings program that we as a state passed in order to help low-income families have an investment mechanism to start saving for college, even if it was small amounts of money. And what I found out when I was on the trail 4 years ago for treasurer was that the Most 529 program, while subsidized for low-income families, had only 3% of the participants were low-income families. So I actually started a not-for-profit that helps to provide kindergartner families with access to that program. What I would like to do, and there is a bill already, but it didn't make it through very far this year. I would like to make sure we marshal through a statewide fix for that low-income family that is not even aware of the Most 529 program.
Yeah, that's really great.
It's all about economic opportunity.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of work as you kind of alluded to right there in the healthcare space and the public service space. Could you talk a little bit about your background there?
Sure. I was actually in the private sector till till I ran for office, state rep. And I was in, private healthcare. I ran large healthcare systems. And one of the things I came across all the time was when, like, for instance, if we couldn't see a patient because they didn't have any insurance, it just would break my heart. And I'm like, well, we need to change that. And my staff would all say, well, then you need to change the law in order to do what you want to do. And I finally said, okay, let's do that. So I ran for state rep, and I worked on healthcare committees and the education committees primarily. I was also on the small business committee. And so I had private experience, which is was really a really good foundation for being able to now turn to policy. So state rep learned how policy works, how negotiations work, and all of that. And then after I ran for Congress, almost picked up a congressional seat in 2008. Was picked up by the Obama administration to be the regional director for Health and Human Services. Mm-hmm. And I spent some time helping with the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. But I also did some really fun things like, we had the agency, the agency for children and families. I'm trying to remember all the names of them. And so we had Children and Families Agency, and then we had the Seniors Agency, which is now the Agency for Community Living, I think, which is a great group of people. And I also was part of the team that responded to the Joplin tornado, when the tornado came through and completely ripped a whole hospital off of its foundation. And there were 130 some casualties and a lot of injured. And our team was the health response team. And we actually had just done an exercise where we put up the mobile medical unit like 4 days before that down in Springfield. And so we were able to put that mobile medical unit up almost immediately right after the tornado, because people were actually coming out of the field still 4 and 10 days later, because they didn't know where they were. And so we did a mental health response. I led the effort for a mental health response for children and seniors primarily. For the Joplin tornado. And we also made sure providers were able to practice in new spots because they weren't able to practice from their clinics. Mm-hmm. So that was a very, very enriching experience for me to have, make sure all of the public health response was there. We worked with FEMA and all of the agencies, the state agencies, and so on. Yeah. So that was a great experience. And then I have done, since then, I ran for state treasurer, and that was a really bad year to run. It was in 2016. That's
a tough one, yeah.
But this year's better, and this seat is better for me. It's better suited for what I think I can do overall with policy, because I have more than just one area of policy that I feel like I can lend my expertise in.
Right. And it must be nicer on travel.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I do.
A lot.
I do.
You know better than I think anyone what it is to do. Dun 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 dun. Do an event. Dun 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 dun. Do another event. Dun 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 dun. Do an event.
Yeah. I think it was. Oh man, I looked at the statistics the other day, but I think over like the 630 something days that I was running, I did 560 something events. So there were a few days there where I didn't have anything. Yeah, it was quite a few, but it's all over.
I'm glad you kept track. That's wonderful.
I tried because we were doing this whole big transparency push, and so like every two was Transparency Tuesday, which I'm trying to bring back in a special way now. I don't know how quite yet, but it would be like, oh, here's exactly where your donations went. Like it went to fill up the gas tank so I could go to Boonville, which I got to go to quite a few times. And so
they love you there.
Some great. Oh man, Cooper County is a fun spot. So it's a good spot.
Yep.
Yep. You have a very fun district. I think probably one of the more fun Senate districts in the state. And you've got a lot of, I mean, you just like the folks that you were talking about, which I think is wonderful. Other people who are running for office and then working with them, helping them, because this really has to be a community effort if we are going to get this done and make sure the state is working in a way. Because, I mean, there are, unfortunately, right now, with the current way that the system is, so much of what's happening in our government is being bought by somebody who has that money, who has that power. And,
That's right.
for the rest of us who are sitting over here hoping that something works and that we get highly qualified people into those positions, we're sitting at a disadvantage looking like, well, what is that government really doing? And, it's sad to see, but it's great to see, somebody with your experience willing to do it. I wonder what your thoughts are, because unfortunately there are a lot of people in Missouri who would be super qualified to run, don't think that they can or they should. Maybe they're like mystified by the process. But some of them are just like, it's not worth it. And I mean, you just talked about, times where you had bills that you wrote that were passed only after you left. But I wonder, what keeps you optimistic to the point that you are deciding to run? Because it's a very hard process. Oftentimes, there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make. What gets you motivated to go back and do it again?
It's really simple. It's going to sound politician-y, but it's people.
Yeah.
It's people and the need that I see out there. And my parents raised me to be a public servant. When my mom was a school teacher and my dad was in the military. But he was also in the medical field, and he served so many people through what he did. He was in the military during the Vietnam War and was a physician, and pretty much helped put the Vietnam vets back together back in the day. And I've just always been taught that when you see a need, you don't just sit around and complain about it. You get up and you do something. See something, do something.
Mm-hmm.
was my whole life. So I see the need. I think that our country has been going in the wrong direction for a long time, economically mostly. I think that the pay-to-play politics plays a big part of that. And for instance, my opponent has received over $3 million in PAC funds. You see our campaign dog in the back.
I was about to ask. Yes, this is wonderful.
That's Izzy. She's our campaign dog.
Izzy's the name?
Huh?
What's your dog's name?
Izzy. This is Izzy.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
We have quite a Missouri furry friend Friday following here. So animals usually give you quite a bump on the podcast. So that was a very good move by Izzy to jump in.
The furry friend following.
Yes.
So what I was saying is he's taken over $3 million in his political career in PAC funds and lobbyist funds. And so it just seems like that's what's getting done right now.
Yeah.
Is the bidding of really well-heeled interests and not the interests of real people. Mm-hmm. We have seen an erosion of the middle class. We have seen an erosion of any kind of economic mobility, the ability to just move up, to have a family supporting job. And that's, I want to fight for that. I think that is what my life is meant for, is to fight for the things that support families, which includes, healthcare, yeah. and it includes, and a whole. And when I say healthcare, I mean affordable healthcare. Right. Of course, the more affordable we make it, the more well fit all of our healthcare is, the more that we'll be able to supply healthcare for everyone. But I also mean that everyone should have it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason any one person in our country should have to worry about healthcare.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to taking out some of the middlemen who profiteer off of healthcare. It's the same with higher education. I think that I support public higher education. I support public schools, and I believe that people like me, if we don't stand up and make the case for why we have to have those, we could lose all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And almost have. I mean, my opponent keeps saying he's done so much for the University of Missouri, and it's just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
There has been a more than a decade-long decline in support to the University of Missouri. And in fact, when I started as a state rep, 30% of the budget for University of Missouri was provided by tuition, and 70% was provided by the state. That has flipped.
Yeah.
In just during the Republicans, the GOP's leadership reign.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hold them accountable and say we're not going to lose public education, so that everyone can go.
Right.
Everyone has access.
Right.
Same with healthcare.
Yeah. Same
with economic opportunity. So I think they've done a poor job with farming too, the family farm. I mean, we've lost the family farm in the time that the GOP has been in leadership. I don't understand why there's a question about who farmers should support.
Yeah, it's tough, I mean, what you see in so many of these areas is such a concentration of power, oftentimes corporate, in just a few institutions. And so you have created these monopolies in a system that was designed not to have those, to actually prevent those. Like, we had laws to say we don't want these coming back when they did start coming. In competition, we talk about capitalism a lot, and I'm a capitalist, you're a socialist or something. But capitalism exists when you have competition. That's the foundation of it. And
that's right.
Saying that, no, I'm going to, give all of these things, all of this power away to the very few that's not capitalism anymore. It's the destruction of it and the corruption of it. And I mean, you see that with agriculture in Missouri as well, and some very big players that give a lot of money to these. I mean, they're just corporatists to that point, and not even, they're monopolists at that point.
Well, it doesn't even have to be an American corporation. Right.
Exactly right.
So the foreign, they've allowed the foreign ownership of so much land in the state of Missouri. It's just mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. And the foreign ownership of farming. I think that if more people knew about that, they would be just absolutely appalled.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, Smithfield, which is now a Chinese-owned corporation, and at the time, if you all haven't seen this, there's some wonderful. It was, I think, PBS did some kind of an interview where Smithfield at the time was an American corporation. It was being sold out to a Chinese conglomerate, some kind of entity, and there were questions because those have to go to Congress and to the federal government for approval and everything else. And they say, oh, there's no involvement here with the Chinese government. And PBS literally sent some reporter to China to talk to the person who runs this corporation that bought it, and said, "Did you have any support from the Chinese government?" It's like, "Oh yes, absolutely. We were directed to do this by the Chinese government." So it's just like, we could, like, a reporter was able to figure that out, but nobody, and with all of the investigatory power and the responsibility really to do that, didn't. And now we have that problem right here in Missouri, and that's why that law was changed to allow so much foreign ownership of land, was because of Smithfield and the sale of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I know all Missourians care about the economics of this. I mean, it's happening in payday lending too. I call it the big sucking sound of the money going out of Missouri to foreign companies, foreign corporations, or big corporations that don't even live here.
Right.
So I'd really I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to find out where it all is. Where's the money?
Yeah. Yes.
Where is
it
going?
Please.
Where's Missourians' money going?
Yes. Please do that. It's an absolute extraction from especially the middle class in America. And we're just extracting as much as we can out of it. And unfortunately, our state, and it's not just in, we talk about what some of the economics are doing to it too, but we talked about why we're even in this situation, because there is so much corruption in the government and purchasing of government decisions. You look at this dark money stuff that I talk about all the time, and you see that these consultants come in from out of the state. They come in and set up these huge contraptions to just take money from people. And, a lot of times it's being used to like buy a policy or something. Most of the time, much of that money is actually being used to line someone's pockets who's setting up this scheme. And then they install somebody into a position of power, and they leave and they go do it in another state. And now you've got that person who's bought and paid for, and that's not benefiting. Even if you want to argue, there should be a whole bunch of money in politics, which most people don't agree with already. But even if you wanted to argue that, that's not benefiting us either. That's also an extraction from Missouri for someone else's benefit in some other state who wants to take even more from us. And it's upsetting to see, and I get a little worked up about it.
So back to the people.
Yes.
That's kind of where we started this conversation, right? So I got into this for the people. My campaign, as of June the 30th, my campaign had almost 900 individual contributors. And in the same period of time, those 3 quarters that I was fundraising, my opponent had 22 individuals.
Yeah.
The rest was all PACs.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it is such a huge contrast, close to 900 versus 22.
Yes. Yes. And unfortunately, we're seeing that in quite a few races too. But yeah, I mean, it's...
So you're right. So where's the money going? So what is the money buy? And we talked about some of it. It's bought foreign ownership of farmland. It's bought corporate monopolies, the ability to have almost monopoly everywhere. We don't break those up like we used to.
Right.
It buys access to contracts. It buys all kinds of things, even in healthcare, it buys stuff. I'll know how to find that money.
Yeah. It's important to know. I mean, you need someone who knows how to look for it. And, it's just like just along that same vein, we put such a premium on that connection with people, right? And I mean, you were just talking about when you're going, just dropping off literature and not even trying to knock on anybody's door. People are still coming out and they want to talk to you about the different issues. And we that accountability piece, that involvement piece is very important to so many of us. And when you look at a campaign that's got hundreds of people who are donating, who's doing that outreach, who's trying to reach folks, versus somebody who's got 20-something, you're not even making an effort because it's easy. You can just get this without having to make an effort. And I think it's hurt our public institutions so much that I think now you see so many more people who are just turning it off and saying, I don't even belong. Like, this doesn't even matter to me anymore.
Right.
And it's just, it's really sad to see that's
I do see some of that. I ran into one lady who says, I don't vote. And I go, you don't vote. She goes, I don't vote. She wouldn't even take a piece of literature because she's just done with the whole system.
Yeah.
She was just done. You were talking about the middle class, and I think it's really important that we talk about that. Because when I first worked as a state rep, I heard a lot when we would talk about, the social programs that support a family to have the economic mobility I've been talking about. Some of that just takes programs, it takes policy, it takes the infrastructure for building families. Like you've heard recently, Elizabeth Warren talked about the infrastructure that childcare is, things like that. And when we would talk about that, I'd hear a lot of argument back that talked about the redistribution of wealth. Well, you're talking about redistribution of wealth. Well, with all of the tax breaks recently and for the past decade plus, I do think we've had a redistribution of wealth.
Yeah.
And I do think that the redistribution of wealth has been the redistribution of wealth to the wealthy. And there has been another great sucking sound of money out of the middle class. And now, it's just people are just trying to make it and just trying to get by.
Yeah.
instead of having future supporting jobs. You know, a job that has not only health care, but it has, you know, time that you can spend with your family. Yeah. It has, you know, it has a retirement that you can build your future so that you can plan for your future. I mean, all of these things are the things that make for economic mobility and the ability to have a future and to build a future. We've lost a lot of that. Some of that has to do with the decline of labor and unions. Yeah. You know, you can see the decline arc go down over the years is the same. That's the same decline of the middle class. Mm-hmm. We used to have, you know, more. I mean, there's been this war on labor and war on collective bargaining, war on unions, so that there's less and less people membership of unions. And you know, unions used to fight for they first fought for our weekend. They gave us our weekend, right? And now we wouldn't give that back. But a lot of people don't have weekends anymore either, because they can't take any time off because they're just scraping by month to month. Right. So, you know, I'd like to see more union membership. I'd like to see us grow that kind of collective voice so that a worker can have a voice at the table when it comes to, you know, building their family.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, just the system that we're in has been built so much around, you know, checks and balances and all that. I mean, now we're struggling with that a little bit, but this concept of, you know, power checking power, because anybody with complete power that corrupts, right, in itself, right, and that was the you know the concept behind unions was, you know, especially when these corporations got so powerful that you needed some kind of power to then balance it, right? Right. And I mean, that's like just the economic argument behind it. And yeah, I mean, now you're seeing, right, another increase. It feels very much like Gilded Age Part 2, right? Like we have to get back to this cycle and do it all over again. And the problem is, and I think you kind of see that even with, you know, if you look at campaign finance and campaign ethics issues, is that folks have learned over time, and so they're entrenching their power to a degree that's a little bit different. The same kind of concept behind it, but they're entrenching their power in a more sophisticated way, so it's harder to combat it. And you know, I think you're totally right, especially when you talk about labor and economic balance, is that we are certainly out of balance right now. In our current system.
Yeah, believe it or not, you know, the conservative, even the conservative capitalist economist Milton Friedman, mm-hmm. He was for unions. He was for labor as to make a competitive market. Right. To make sure there was a competitive market, you needed unions. Interesting. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that Adam Smith, the guy, I bring this up all the time, and I've got staff that always makes fun of me because they're like, no one knows who Adam Smith is anymore.
I know, right?
Some people do. I mean, you still know. But Adam Smith, who was the founder, or at least the idea behind capitalism and the wealth of nations, if you ever heard of that too. But he was very much in belief that there needed to be some kind of a strong regulation of that economy, because the economy needed to have rules, and we needed to set them as a society so that the economy wasn't just running all by itself. It's that it was designed to benefit people. Again, back to people.
That's exact. And a lot of businesses would do so much better if we laid a foundation that made a level playing field for everybody. Exactly. We don't have level playing fields when you have this much corruption in politics.
Exactly right. And I think a great example of that, you look at small businesses right now that have been asking for tax parity, because right now you can go and shop online. And those massive online retailers have a huge tax advantage over small businesses right here in Missouri. And small businesses report year after year after year, including in a, you know, what you would think a stronger conservative state that touts, you know, pro-business and everything else, has not been serving our small businesses at all. It's put them at a disadvantage.
Totally agree. Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. We did have.
I know. Sigh.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just the sigh, yeah. But we had a comment.
We're going to change it all, Elad. We're
We're
going to
change
get
the
in
whole
there.
thing. The whole thing is going to change. That's the whole, the good parts we'll keep, but the bad parts, they can go. So, Kay had a comment. Put it on the screen. It doesn't help that Moleg took away local control, allowing CAFOs in the small towns who have no say over it now. Yeah, it's a very good point. And for those of you, we actually talked about this last episode too. It came up, but these concentrated animal feeding operations, and actually in Cooper County, I think they had one of those local regulations against it from a health ordinance perspective that the state government was trying to take away that control.
Right.
What are your thoughts about CAFOs in general?
Oh, absolutely. We need more local control and regulation, allow our health departments to work the way they're supposed to, especially with these industrial livestock operations. We need to protect our health and our resources. I also think that COVID has shown that we need to diversify our food chain, because, and maybe try and decentralize it, which is a big word for saying we need more family farming again. We need to diversify and decentralize the food system, ensuring its stability in times like COVID. Because we saw, if one plant goes down because a virus went through it and you lose one plant, you could lose it in a flood, you could lose it in, over disease. If one plant goes down, we were all really worried we weren't going to have meat there for a minute, right? So, I just think that we need to be supporting the family farm and stand up for our family farmers the way we should.
Yeah.
It's an investment in the future. It's an investment in rural communities. It's not just about healthcare in rural communities. It's also about this kind of family supporting jobs and family supporting farms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That will bring the rural lifestyle back that people want. And it's not only happening in Cooper County. I mean, Boone County is having the same. We have some CAFOs that want to move into Boone County.
Yeah.
So because we've got outside of Columbia city limits, we have quite a bit of rural land that people, because it's close to I-70 and all of that it looks attractive.
Yep. Franklin County is another one where they actually had this zoning. So, you got a zone for it or whatever, and they had this zoning proposal. And so they put up the map of where they were proposing CAFOs could go. And it was like, I can't remember what color. It was like a light gray or something. And I remember I was looking at the map because they were showing it to me. I was looking at the map, and the entire thing was light gray. I said, "What? Where is the zone for it?" It's like that. So the entire county. Well, yeah, except for like this little strip here. And okay, the whole county. Yeah.
How does that work? Right.
Yeah. So
that could be anyone's backyard. In other words,
yes,
it could be anyone's backyard.
You do not want a pig farm, especially a concentrated one, in your backyard. You do not want that.
Iowa loosened its regulations on CAFOs, and they are now sorry for it.
Yeah.
Nebraska did the same thing. My husband and I, I guess it was probably 8 years or so ago, we went through Nebraska in the interstate that goes all the way across it. And for a good hour, we could hardly breathe.
Yeah.
It was the stench was so awful for about an hour of, pig farms after pig farm after pig farm, CAFO.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think Missouri wants that. I don't think Missouri wants to go in that direction. I mean, other states have started to go in the opposite direction. So let's learn from them. They've shown us. We're show me state. They've shown us it's not all that good.
Yeah. And you talk about
farm and put in a CAFO.
Well, yeah, and we talk about extraction from the middle class. They ain't going to put any of these in very wealthy neighborhoods. Those folks are going to get that zone the right way. But those folks who are going to lose out, especially when so much of American wealth is tied into home values, I mean, those are the communities that are going to be the hardest hit by again.
Right. I understand that we have a food chain that has to feed millions, hundreds of millions. I understand that. But we can do that with a more diversified, decentralized system that's more stable.
Yes, agreed. And I mean, we've done it for a long time to I mean, we just, we haven't been enforcing, and I talked about this a lot too, because we can do this on the state level, especially from the Attorney General's office, but the federal level too for
Right.
antitrust law and antitrust
Right.
protections. And honestly, you do hear there are some folks in the more conservative side of things who look at this and say, especially when it comes to issues around like privacy and privacy rights, about really looking at some of this concentration, especially in the tech space. I wish they applied that same kind of lens to everything else that's impacting us. But at least maybe that's a start. Maybe that's a place where folks can find some common ground. I don't know, but
Right.
I hope so. Try to be.
My district, still staying on rural issues, my district lost a hospital just recently, just 6 months ago. They lost a hospital. Boom. They announced it one day and it was closed the next.
Yep.
And so, I want to bring my healthcare expertise to make sure we don't close rural hospitals, that we give them what they need to stay open, for starters. Now, I realize that in Cooper County, there were some management problems with that hospital, but that's because a management company from outside came in and, tried to profiteer off of whatever. They did some they did some specific lines of service that they were just trying to profiteer off of it. And I think that we need to support our county hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And, Medicaid expansion is one of those things that will help be at least some funding stream for the patients that a county hospital would see. And I also want to, one of the things below the radar that you said, tell us what you're thinking about below the radar. One of the things I'd like to do for rural hospitals is to make sure that there is some regulation that does not allow a hospital to close the next day and not have a plan for what's going to happen with that community's health care. Mm-hmm. I've been around hospitals long enough to know, if you're struggling and you're going to be having to close. So, I think there should be at least a 2-month window where you start working with the community and you make a plan for what's going to happen with the healthcare. If the community wants to step up and take care of that hospital and take that hospital over, they get the opportunity to do so. I think there just needs to be some regulation that doesn't allow a hospital to just close the next day.
That's really great. I love that idea. I mean, almost like a receivership type model or something. Yeah.
Right.
I think that would be great. Yeah, I know I was in, I got to really call this doctor back. He was really lovely. But in Nevada, they were talking about a hospital that wasn't doing so hot. They needed more funding, so they were trying to pass a local tax increase, and a doctor came in who's a Republican. He came in to present on it. I was presenting at the same meeting, and we got to hang out a little bit. But one of the questions was, would Medicaid expansion help? And he's like, yes, it would. It absolutely would.
Absolutely would.
Yeah, it's like, yes, please, goodness gracious, do this. But yeah, I mean, even now when we're talking about the coronavirus, COVID, and everything else, there's some of the rural hospitals that have had to expend resources in ways they weren't expecting. They were already not doing so well.
Right.
And there are some right now that are close to capacity in some of the ICUs and, when they do have the capacity there. And so we do have to be careful, especially right now during the pandemic, that we are looking at those issues and continue to look at them. And so I hope that we can get this Medicaid stuff implemented very soon and very well, and hopefully we won't be thrown. I guess you start to naturally feel that in Missouri that someone's going to throw some kind of a wrench in there because that's just what we're used to now. We're just expecting it.
There's a lot to consider in expanding and doing it the right way. So I hope to be there. And,
yes.
I don't have, I don't have a learning curve.
Yeah.
On healthcare issues. I'll be able to tell if a proposal to do this or that with it is a good one for the people or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's
I remember going.
Right there,
I do remember going when I was state rep. I was the first one to go to the microphone and say, if you do this, rural hospitals are going to close.
Yeah.
And no one believed me on the other side of the aisle. They didn't believe me. Well, that's not going to happen. There's going to be all these other things that step in, and it did not happen. I said rural hospitals are going to close, and they did. We've had like 13 since that time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that sometimes we've got to see that to believe it too. But
Yeah.
You could just look at the spreadsheets and the numbers and figure that out before it happens. That would be nice, but
Right.
yeah, that would be. Yeah. We had a comment here, and since we're kind of getting towards the end, I think it's a good one because we got it early and I wanted to put it on. Let's see if I can get it up on the screen here. It's from Brian. It's going to be a big one. So I met Judy Baker when I was an intern in the state legislature many years ago. She is one of the smartest people I've ever met. Missouri would be better if she is serving in any capacity. Don't have a question, but you are both amazing. So that's pretty great.
That's great.
Testimonial right here.
Many people, I guess.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's a really good sign. Having worked with folks in the legislature and visited quite a bit, and provide testimony, but also worked with a whole bunch of folks on legislation. It's a very good testimonial when folks who have worked in that building, especially as interns or legislative assistants, vouch for you, because those are the folks who really know you behind closed doors too. So, no, that's really great. Thanks for watching, Brian. Appreciate it. Well, I want, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Is there, I know we've covered a lot, and this was a really great conversation. Jim, who's watching too, was agreeing. He put a comment in there. But I wonder, is there any, I guess, last thoughts that you'd like to leave folks with, about the race, about politics in general, especially about local government, but anything that you've got on your mind that you'd like to share?
Well, the only thing that we have not talked about that's actually incredibly important to me is building, making sure that I'd like to see Missouri be the leader, or become a leader at least, in a renewable energy economy.
Yeah.
And I think we have a great opportunity to do that. We've got some tech sectors that can help with that. We've got, lots of opportunity either in wind or solar or hydro, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to go to Costa Rica right before COVID hit, and they are like 95% renewable energy now.
Wow.
And that you can do it in a little country like that, and you could do it even in a state. We in 2008 we passed the renewable energy standards, and I'd like to see us continue. As a senator, I'll be looking at those compliance reports and how we're doing on it, and I want to make sure that we move towards. I think economic sustainability is going to be, in the next 50 years, is going to be based on whether or not we have environmental stability.
Yeah. It's a very, very important and big issue, and one that is certainly coming up a lot in Missouri. And the benefit of our state, the unique position of our state being right in the middle of everything in the country, is a very important one. Oh, I've got to hold up. Oh, I missed her. I was going to get a good wide angle of her, but yeah, we've got that blur. Oh, there she is.
Isn't she pretty?
Oh, she is. Oh, that's wonderful.
She's a pretty baby.
Yeah, we've been doing this thing. So we used to do every Friday. It would be someone would submit their, and you're very welcome to do this, but they'd submit their animal from around the state, and we'd put them up. And we've had lots of things. We've had horses. We've had donkey, I think, once. Yeah, but folks from all over, they just put them in. These past couple of Fridays. And maybe it's a benefit to me losing for them. But these past couple of Fridays, we've been trying to take animals at different shelters throughout the state and say, hey, here's the one we're highlighting. So we actually did highlight one in your district in celebration of you coming on. We did yesterday. So
nice.
It was Second Chance in Columbia is the one that we were highlighting.
Izzy has a campaign T-shirt, but she doesn't like it a lot.
It's tough. It's tough to get those things on sometimes. Yeah.
The only other thing we haven't talked about a lot, and we won't have time now, but you're very interested in this subject too, is criminal justice reform.
Yes.
And I will be working with my colleagues across the Senate to work on the things that are important to them. I've seen the agenda that they've set, and I think it's a worthy agenda that we should work on, make sure it gets passed next year as soon as possible. We should not delay. Yeah.
And I think, I've been trying to make this point, and Brian, Senator Williams has been making this point too, but, when we talk about dealing with crime and violent crime especially, if you separate that out from accountability, separate that out from building a justice system that truly works for everybody. You've already got folks who don't trust that system, who don't want to participate, who are worried if they participate, what's going to happen to them. And so when you separate those two things and then expect everything to get fixed on its own, it doesn't. And so I think it's very important that we keep that focus on any of these kinds of issues when we're talking about increased prosecutions. You also have to talk about smart solutions, making sure our public defender system, all of these different things that
all of
really
it
neglected.
I mean, it is the whole process needs redemption.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I think it needs a lot of us really looking at what we're going to prioritize and what we think our values are, and that's really what, in the end, any justice system really needs to reflect. And certainly, I know this from having spoken to many Missourians, and I know you know this is true too. None of us wants an unfair justice system. We don't want an unfair state. We don't want a state that is geared towards somebody else just because of a number in a bank account versus the rest of us. And I think that's kind of the general theme here already. But
that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that, we all have we do have same goals. The two sides of the aisle have the same goals sometimes, and just two totally different ways of getting there. And so we've got to figure out where the dissonance lies and try and get work past it, and do at least a few good things. And then do a few more good things. You might not get the whole orchard, but if you can get a couple of things done and then try again the next year, I think that's how we're going to have to approach this until we get some more fair maps and, better representation and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to put your website up there too. It's baker4mo.com right there. You can all see it right there in the middle of your screen. So that's where they can go and they can learn about the campaign. They can also get involved in your campaign too. Is that right?
That's right. There's a sign up to volunteer.
Wonderful.
Get involved.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So go
Elad.
there.
Thank you so much. You're doing good work.
No, thank you so much for coming on, and for everybody else who's out there and has stuck around this whole time. Thank you all for being here. And you can see this episode. We'll put it uploaded pretty soon, but this will stick around. So if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are, it will be there. You can still share it. And then all of our episodes always go up at eladgross.live. So we will see you soon for the next episode, and thank you for tuning in. Have a good weekend, everyone.